the pain that he's about to suffer himself. What Jesus does, and again, this is just Jesus at his best. He could just have easily, as a political candidate, as someone who's beginning a new movement, he could just make promises of how things are going to change. And he never makes promises how things are going to change. Jesus only speaks in a way that says, I'm going to change you. Because you are a world changer. You eventually will become one. So instead of focusing on how things need to change, and again, not that things didn't need to change, because just like this picture on the screen, the enemy's ever present. It's right there and then. Jesus conveys this whole thing of just in the previous chapters, he announces multiple times the coming of the Holy Spirit. And this is what I want you to see. Jesus implies that the Holy Spirit has two primary tasks. Now this, again, just please listen, because again, I'm just thinking of the confusion that we have in culture today in this time in history. You got to remember that who Jesus is speaking to around the table, he just washed the disciples' feet. He just shared the bread, shared the cup, and he's speaking about his death and then resurrection also. I want you to listen to this. These Jewish boys, all that they knew was monotheism, one God. And now Jesus introduces this concept that now there is a Holy Spirit that is also God. And the task for this Holy Spirit is primarily to reveal truth. So, as men, we have to be the men who reveal truth today. Now, can I just make a quick commercial in here? Let's just get this clear. Truth is not simply a concept. Truth is not simply an opinion that you may have over a specific situation. Can I just ask you to embrace this and maybe to write it down? Truth is a person. And his name is Jesus. Are you following me on this one? I want you to listen to this, because some Christian people, they're so caught up into just battling truth, whether it's biblical doctrine or whatever the case may be. His name is Jesus. And that's why some people can be so indoctrinated and so enamored with doctrine and be literally jerks to the brother and sister. Because they think that truth is simply a concept, a definition of terms. See, truth is a person. So the Holy Spirit is going to reveal, Jesus says, who I really am. And then the Holy Spirit is going to be the one who, and by the way, you will need a comforter. Because what's coming to you, boys and girls, well, in this case, is boys, because there's only boys in that upper room. You're going to need, see, you don't even know what you're going to need. So I'm providing something that you don't even know you need. Does that sound like God? That he provides things that we don't even know we need? Come on, think about it. He gives us things that we never thought we would ever need. Well, that's the Holy Spirit. So here's what I want you to hear, that on verse 1 of chapter 14, he begins the conversation by saying, do not let your hearts be, what's the word? Troubled. The implication, Jesus is not saying, I hope, as you see my body being broken and my blood being shed on a cross in the next few hours, I hope when you see the Roman Empire rise against you and you're going to be persecuted, I hope that when you see my mutilated body hanging on a cross like any other Jew and most Jews in human history, I hope you do not get trouble. What Jesus is saying is, stop it, because they were already troubled. This is why I'm just telling you right now. The implication this morning for you to be a man is not that you avoid thinking that you are David. The implication is that we all men think that we are David. And God reminds us this morning by saying, stop it, pull back. See, I can just talk about this issue all day long, but I won't, because the Cowboys are going to play later today and we're going to see the Cowboys. But here's what I want you to hear from me. Some of you ladies are trying to find a man who is David for you. And I'm just telling you, you need exactly the opposite. You need a man in your life that will recognize that he is not David and he will take you to David. Alright, I don't think I'm making any sense this morning. Come on, think about it. When you as a woman put your trust and your faith and your hope in your husband, or your boyfriend, whoever he is, you are deceiving yourself. Because he's not David. Come on, think about it. He wasn't created to be David. There's only one David born of a virgin, and he gave his life for you ladies. You just need a man that will help you walk towards David. So here's what I want you to think about it. Most people will argue the question, or the statement, does God actually exist? And I'm just here to remind you that at the end of the day, when you understand that you are troubled, when you find yourself in the midst of chaos, when you are at the deepest of pain because your loved ones are leaving you behind, because the inconceivable takes place, I just don't believe the argument is the existence of God. I believe human beings, if they can be honest, the argument is whether God actually cares. And I'm just praying this morning. I pray all week that you have met not only the God who exists, but the God who cares. See, for men, as long as you see yourself as David, you will never see the need of a caring God. Because, come on, that's why you're educated, right? That's why you are the man. Well, again, it begins with the sense of brokenness. So you gotta wrestle with this concept. Listen to what he says. After he introduces this concept of, again, just do not stop being troubled. Not that you will hopefully never get troubled, but stop being troubled. He also says you have to trust in God. As you trust in God, you gotta trust also in me. So again, I want you to picture the faces of this man sitting around Jesus in the upper room. They are ingrained and enamored, and they worship for centuries the concept of one single God, and Jesus is saying, I am God. See, for you and I, we don't have a problem with that because that's part of our distinctiveness in theological and doctrinal belief system, right? For this man around the table, this is crazy and nonsense. That this guy who professes to say God in the next few hours is going to be treated like a criminal. Deuteronomy says that it is cursed the man who hangs on a tree. So how can you be God and be cursed? Anybody has an answer to that one? Because he had to become sin for you to be delivered from sin. So think about this. What Jesus is trying to get this man to think is that believe, if you're going to trust God, and they knew how to trust God. They knew that to have faith in God. They knew the God of the Old Testament. Jesus is saying, okay, that is something that is important, but you cannot continue to treat trust and faith and dependence as an old experience, as a past experience. It's going to be habitual and it's going to be ongoing. And especially when things do not make sense, you continue to remain faithful because the time is going to come where your faithfulness will be tested. So, in verse 2, he closes the deal and says, now that I have shown you the importance for you to understand that you have to stop being troubled. Now again, I didn't promise that things are going to change for you. All that I said is stop being troubled. Stop being confused. Stop mourning on this deal. And then he introduces the why. And the why is because I am God. You trust in God, trust in me. And by the way, I'm about to go into something that is going to challenge your belief because I want to look like a defeat. But I want you to trust in me. Then he goes and gives him this big picture scenario. This understanding that is so comforting for many, many of us today. In my Father's house. Now, listen to the language. Now he gets into this family relationship. It's not just the God of the Old Testament house. It's not just what your mama told you about believing in this system or this religion. He says, it is my Father's house. Are many rooms. Now, this is very, very crucial to me because what you see in there is the house that we as a family own when I was getting at the end of my middle school years, almost getting into high school. It took us 9 years to build this house with my parents, obviously. And for 9 years, because the system back then, you don't get in debt, you just build as you have money. So 9 years. I remember the earliest stages when the foundation was created. And I remember just going through seasons in life when they built the house. And they finally built a house, and this is the house where I grew up. This is Mexico at its best. And from this house, I left the place at age 17 to come to the States and journey for the last 24 years. But here's the crazy thing. The sacrifices that were made to build this house, within the next 8 years to 9 years, my parents, unfortunately, go through a divorce. And watch this, please, because this story is so prevalent in today's culture. You invested all these years. You built this house. Your children spend some of the most crucial times in this house. We built a life together in this house. Everybody moves away. We grew up. We became adults. And ultimately, this is the very same house that they used to fight on court to split the money as they sold the house. Have you heard those stories before? But the very same investment that you poured your very soul into becomes the very reminder of the bitter test of brokenness. So the concept that Jesus is saying, hey, I want you to know that in my Father's house are many rooms. In the Jewish mind, this Jewish boys, what they are thinking is the remembrance of the temple that was built by Solomon. In the year is 586, when Nebuchadnezzar, through the Babylonian Empire, crushes Jerusalem and takes away the temple, which implies takes away the presence of God. So here's the question that I believe the disciples were asking. You are asking us to stop being troubled and to believe that you are God. Because ultimately, you're going to take us into the Father's house. Have you read your history? Because there is no house. There's no house. And then how do you trust a God who apparently got defeated? Have you ever been in that situation? That you want to believe in God, and the pain is so deep, and the struggles are so real that you don't know how to process. In your mind, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. But your heart is moving you in the opposite direction because you have this struggle of belief in your heart because what you have gone through. I mean, I look at this picture and nothing else but to see the marriage being dissolved after 30 plus years. The investment of a life, the memories that we built and created, the character that we are today as 3 children of this marriage had apparently been dissolved. And how do you trust this? How do you go back into this and put your faith in something that is gone, apparently gone? Well, this is why Jesus helped us understand this. That the future abiding for you to be in my Father's house is nothing else but the consummation, the climax of your abiding with me right now, says Jesus. And I'm bringing this up because many of us, we want heaven at the expense of forsaking Christ right now. At the expense of seeing Jesus as a fire insurance policy that age 14, you make a decision for Christ, you live like there is no God, and then ultimately you go to heaven. See, the 3 individuals that I saw going before the Lord, and their bodies went to sleep. Please look at me. The 3 individuals that I just experienced in the last 2 weeks, one thing is celebrated as a common denominator. It wasn't just their faith. You know what it was? Their faithfulness. Would that be said about you and I when the funeral comes into place? Would that be said about our children when they come into this place of how they will be remembered? If, Jesus says, if it were not so, I would have told you. So I am going to prepare a place for you. And the word is y'all. It's not you. So get over yourself. It's about y'all. Okay? Because Jesus didn't die for you. He died for humanity. You just happened to be a human being. You're a breathing organism. So don't make it about you. Just do yourself a favor. Here's what I want you to know. Jesus' life, Jesus' teaching, Jesus' death is what allows us, for sinful men, broken vessels, to actually approach and dwell with the Holy God. The invitation this morning is simple. If you have never trusted the God of the Scriptures, and you are literally consumed maybe by some trouble, I'm not here to promise that things are going to change. They could change. But if you remember, it was at Calvary, with the brokenness of Jesus' body and blood, that even though Jesus cried out and said, Father, why have you forsaken me? Jesus cried out and said, Father, the night before he cried and said, if it is possible, allow me to avoid this experience. God could have changed things for Jesus, and he decided not to. So I don't know what your story is, but if you can just, again, embrace the concept that we gotta stop being trouble, we have to focus on Jesus being God, and He's worthy of our trust. We have to understand that it is His life, it is His teaching, and it is ultimately His death that allowed you to make a decision this morning. So if you've never trusted Jesus, would you please do that today? Would you please recognize that Jesus is dead, and you are the people of God, that you are confused, that you are desperate, and you need to come to Jesus. Now, for some of you, that implies maybe a step even further to get water baptism, to go through water baptism. Maybe for some of you, it's church membership. I don't know exactly where you are in this deal, but ultimately, I want you to see the big picture, how God is preparing a place, has prepared a place for you, but that consummation, it has to relate to the life, to the teachings, and to the death of Christ. You avoid, you disregard the life of Jesus. You disregard the teachings of Jesus. You disregard His death and resurrection. There's nothing you can do. I mean, you can be a great guy. You can be extremely smart, extremely successful, extremely whatever. But you are nothing unless Jesus shows up. And this Jesus showing up, here's how you can evaluate whether Jesus has shown up or not. Because again, some of you think of Jesus as, again, so many different concepts. When Jesus shows up, you embrace and you understand that you are the people of God, that you are frightened, that you are fearful, that you are confused, and that you have no idea what to do with the challenge. That's where the conversation begins.